have not done a Colour Me reading video since May, so this is gonna be a long one. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm giving you, I can't actually tell you what number update this is, so refer to number that will appear right here. Update for my Colour Me Reading Project Pan. This project was created by me and Samantha, who I'll have linked down below, as well as everyone else who has joined in. And we were inspired by KaliFab and her Monochromatic Year, who I'll also have linked down below. So it's been a while since I've given you a Colour Me reading update. For those of you who are new to this project and have no idea what I'm talking about, the concept is that we read books within a month that match the colour to that month. What I'll do is I'll put up a little screen grab of what colours we're working on for 2021. So like I said, we have not done an update since May. So we are going to be going through June, July, August, and September. And in those 4 months, I've read 12 books. So we are going to try to do this as quickly as possible with as little, I guess, information as possible, because you know that I like to ramble when it comes to the books. So let's jump straight in with June. In June, I've read 5 books, and I'll put the covers up here if I don't currently have the cover with me, and this could be because I listened to it online via Libby, or I've had to return the book. So I'll let you in on a little secret. I've got some books here that are majorly overdue, because I putting off returning them so that I could do this update. And like I said, I haven't done one since May, so some of these books are like 4 months overdue. But let's not talk about that. Anyway, let's jump straight in. The first book I read was Savage Prince by Megan March, and this is the first book in the Savage trilogy. This is actually a spin-off of one of March's other series, which I've already read, which is the Ruthless King series. This one actually focuses on Kira Kilgore's personal assistant, Temperance Ransom. Not Brennan. Temperance Ransom. And it actually goes straight in full hog. It is spicy from the first scene, which is definitely a difference to the Ruthless King series. That one was a bit more of a slow burn with hints of spice kind of thrown in, where this one was go in, go hard. Following on from that, I actually read the second book in the series, which is called Iron Princess, also by Megan March. The spiciness definitely continued, and the story of the love relationship between Ransom and Savage is really interesting, because it is a completely different spin than what we kind of had with the Lachlan-Kira relationship. And in saying that, I actually didn't love how March portrayed Lachlan and Kira within the Savage trilogy. Certain aspects I just didn't really enjoy. It was kind of like we met this character in the first series, and then in this series they just didn't have any development. And I know that maybe that's how other people see them, but I kind of felt like he would have more loyalty to those who are important. I don't know. I just didn't love whenever there was an interaction, especially between Temperance and Lachlan. I really did not enjoy those scenes. So in this book, we end up going down another rabbit hole. Not only do we have the love story that we're dealing with, and we also have another storyline that's kind of expected for a book that's kind of the underbelly of the New Orleans mafia. So we have Temperance's brother gets into a lot of trouble and kind of goes missing, but we aren't sure if he's actually been caught or captured or kidnapped, or he himself is on the run. We do find out quite quickly that he's on the run. And Savage, Temperance's love interest, is trying to kind of find out what's going on and see if he can, I guess, fix it. I did enjoy where this storyline was going, and I definitely jumped straight into the third book of the series. So the third book of the series was Rogue Royalty. But I will say that when we hit the ending, I was kind of a little bit heartbroken. I didn't really enjoy the twist ending that occurred with the brother and his trouble that he was in, and I especially kind of felt that they treated Magnolia dirty. And that's something that I would actually like to see more of. So Magnolia is a staple character from both the Ruthless King series and the Savage series. And I kind of actually feel like that March herself doesn't like her. The way she writes her, it's almost like she hates her, but she kind of loves her. Is she against her? Is she a bad guy? Is she a good guy? We don't really know. It's really awkward. We don't really... I kind of got the impression that March herself does not like this character. So I definitely would be interested in reading a March series that actually follows Magnolia, that is about Magnolia, and whether she actually finds love, because, what a dog ending for Magnolia. Overall, for the Savage series, I'd say I enjoyed it less than I did the Ruthless King series, and I didn't really enjoy the ending either as much as I enjoyed the ending of the Ruthless King series. In saying that though, it was definitely a well-written story and I enjoyed my time reading them. And I will continue in the future to read more Megan March books. Following on from that, I read Decluttering at the Speed of Life, Winning Your Never-Ending Battle with Stuff. This is by Dana K. White, and it is very much overdue. If you can't tell by the title, this book is about decluttering, and decluttering in a process that is easier for you to achieve when you have a lot of stuff, when you have a large collection, I guess is the way to say, and you are trying to do that while still live your life. Because unfortunately, there comes a time with people like me who maybe accumulate so much stuff that it becomes a project and it does not become sustainable or easy to do, to actually declutter or clean or organize in a life where you are still working, etc. I really enjoyed the way this is written. Dana is rather funny, but also she is very, very relatable. I found that I enjoyed reading this book because some decluttering books or organizational books that you read about are by people who already have it down packed. Where this, even though she now is starting to, hit a stride in her decluttering or her fight against stuff, she come from a place that is very similar to, I guess, where people like me are sitting. So if you are fighting the battle against stuff and you are a closet hoarder like myself, I would definitely recommend giving this book a read. And finally for June, we read Darkness Unchained. This is the second book in the Skybrook series and it's by Mackenzie Hunter. I'm still not loving the story. It hasn't caught me too much, and honestly, I don't really like Sky, but I'm kind of hooked at the same time. So it is highly likely that I will be reading the third book in the series. And I'm kind of interested to see, we're 2 books in, and I'm kind of interested to see if Sky and Ethan are actually gonna be a thing, or if this is just a kind of tease, or I don't know. It is an interesting book in some ways, and other ways I find it a bit drab. But overall, though it's not my favorite fantasy supernatural story, and I've read a few that have got werewolves in them, especially I'm a big fan of werewolf and shifter fan fiction, so I have read quite extensively in this field. It's not hitting all my, go-to buttons, but it's not the worst I've read, and I am probably 99% going to continue on with this series. I guess I also should have mentioned, I've just realized, that the color for June was actually black. So that's why all these books fit within the color theme. And it's definitely a lot easier to find books that somehow match the color black than some of the other colors that we have coming up. Next up for July, we have the color red, and I actually only managed to get through one book in July, and that was Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko. I hope that I managed to say that correctly. So I listened to this book by audiobook. I feel like at this point I should note that I don't always tell you when I've read a book via audiobook or when I've read a book physically, but in this case I feel like it needs to be mentioned. So I read this via audiobook, and one, I loved the accents. The accents and the language was done beautifully. It really, really brought me into the story, and it felt like somebody, the main character Kerry, in fact, was telling you the story, that you were there and a part of it. So I feel like I should also mention the reason why the language and the pronunciation of things really mattered within this story. It is because it is an Indigenous Australian story set in current times, but it definitely reflects back to the sins of the past and how those sins of the past have affected the people of the present. It was really like opening a door and an insight into a life that I personally do not have any experience in. In many of the towns that I've lived in and places I've been, we've had a family or two nearby that are very much like Kerry's family and have that kind of place within that society. And I guess it really hit home some of the ideas of systematic racism. But in saying that, I enjoyed the fact that the story wasn't one where the characters themselves are not without flaws. In fact, they have some really terrible flaws that you cannot turn a blind eye to. So overall, I'll say that the structure, the language, the underlying story was well done. However, I myself found it hard to get through. I read it for my book club, and another girl who actually attended the same book club read the same book, and she only got halfway through because she found it hard to get through, though she was reading the physical book. So I got all the way through it, and overall I enjoyed it, and I appreciate my time I spent reading it, but it wasn't a book that I found easy to read. Though in saying that, I kind of assume that that's actually the point of it. It's not easy to read. And I also found that majority of the action or the storylines, there was so many loose ends at the end of the book. It was one of those stories that is an ending without actually ending. I definitely would like to go on to read more by Lukashenko because I know that this is a highly rated book. And though it wasn't something that I found I would read again or was a quick, easy read, it was a story with a lot of heart and a lot of substance. So I'd definitely say if you're looking to read a book that kind of incorporates all of that, I would definitely recommend this one. Moving on to August, and the color for August is silver. The first book I managed to read was this one, and straight off the bat you can tell that this is actually a children's book. This is Raptors of Paradise. It is the first book in the world of Supersaurus books, and it is by J.J. Burridge. And it's by J.J. Burridge. I, for one, did not go onto the app and start doing all the online adventure style stuff that goes with this specific book or this series. But if you have a child who's into dinosaurs, I would 100% recommend they get into that, and I would recommend that they read this book. So the whole story is, what if dinosaurs did not go extinct? What if they were still set and out and about and around us? This book is set back in the industrial kind of era. It does have a very much steampunk kind of feel to it, but it definitely had some fantastic twists and turns and that wee bit touch of gore that I think a lot of preteens would really enjoy. And the illustrations are just fantastic. It was definitely an easy read, and I flew through it pretty quickly, and I really enjoyed the actual story, especially the twist that we come to about midway through. I would definitely recommend giving this book a go, and if you are interested in dinosaurs, it does have some appendixes that go through the different type of dinosaurs and their, I guess, makeup in relation to both this story and real life. So like I said, this is a part of the world of Supersaurus stories, the series, and I will definitely be continuing on with this series. Next up, I read Coven, which is the first book in the Soulmark series by Rebecca Main. And not only am I a big fan of the werewolf slash shifter trope, I am also a sucker for a Soulmark slash soul bond book. So this had me. I was interested. I will say that I was a bit disappointed in this one, but I did appreciate majority of the storylines and themes that Main tried to incorporate. So we have the main character, Zoe, who is a witch, but she is not yet aware of it. She's currently in a relationship with a guy named Ben, heads off to her hometown with her grandma, finds out she's a witch, meets the soul mark of her life, which is Xander, and he is the alpha of the werewolf pack. So it does have this love triangle aspect with Zoe, Ben, and Xander. In saying that, Main has already set up that relationship between Zoe and Ben to feel almost like no matter what, it was a dead end. The reason behind that is supposedly Zoe has been hurt by cheating in her past, and that fear of it happening again has been put onto Ben so much that she's scared to jump in too much of a relationship with him, which is how Zoe ends up where she is. So I was really interested in reading that kind of story of how Zoe deals with her actually being the cheater, her being the bad guy in this situation, though in saying that her and Xander never fully committed to anything, they were on a lot of levels, I guess, mentally and slightly physically cheating on Ben. But in saying that, Main has set Ben up to almost be a bit of an unlikable character. Ben comes over and has dinner with Zoe's grandma and aunties, and during that time, their auntie slips him a truth serum, and it comes out that Ben has a kind of what I would consider backwards opinion of women and their place within the kitchen. And that's kind of blown over in some aspects. I thought that that was going to be the catalyst that was used for Zoe to basically end her relationship with Ben and hence not actually cheat on him. But instead, it's kind of just chucked out there, mentioned a couple times, but really left to hang in the winds. So then when we get to the point that Zoe's actually breaking up with Ben, which is so far down the track that you've lost yourself if you haven't left your cookie crumbs, you don't really have any feelings either way. The relationship is essentially already dead in your eyes as the reader, and it just seems kind of unnecessary, though it isn't, because the relationship is still there, but they've hardly seen each other in months. Even Ben doesn't answer all of Zoe's calls. If any of her calls, he hasn't called her back in days. So it just feels like, even though it's never made clear, that Ben actually might already be in another relationship, which is where I thought that was going to go. So there's all these kind of plot points laid out there, almost like Maine was setting us up to have that story, and then she's kind of just let them drop away. I found the cheating aspect really appealing because that's something that doesn't overly get discussed or dealt with within Soulmark or Soul Bond books. It's kind of like we just get rid of that other partner. They were always a bad guy. They were never really the one. And boom, we're in our happy soul-marked soul bond relationship. So I really kind of was excited to go down this idea of what if you actually are in love with your boyfriend or your partner before you meet your soulmark? How does that fit in? And I mean, if you are a fan of poly relationships, that could definitely be a different storyline. And in addition to that, I will say that Zoe herself, for me, wasn't a really relatable or likable character. And I'm especially not a fan of that storyline where somebody has no idea, they've just been introduced to something, anything, and they go on acting like they do know. That is something that was experienced also in the Sky Brooks books, that this idea of, oh, I've just become a witch, but hey, I can look after myself and I'm going to make these decisions like I have all the knowledge in the world when I actually don't really know too much about this world. That really irks me. It super bothers me when characters are just choose to be ignorant. You've now discovered something new and you're new to it, and that's okay. You are okay to be new to something and not have all the answers, even if you are a main heroine within a book. I prefer a heroine who comes into a story not knowing the answers, but chooses to ask the questions and get the information when needed and when they don't know. It is okay to say, I don't know. Because you can be badass and not actually have all the answers. And that doesn't mean you just stumble through. It means you ask the questions when you need to know. That is my random spiel about that. And really, that was venturing into whole other issues in the world today. But I did find that really frustrating, that at certain points she was going about things that really I thought, you don't know. You don't know. Sit back and let your grandma and your aunties who have a lot more knowledge than you do it, be the ones. And I also don't like it in that aspect as well, moving on from that, when there's information that is hidden from people because we're trying to protect them or it's a need to know basis, but then that person's running around doing all this bad stuff because they don't have all the details. They're doing silly things. And you generally, if you're the grandma of somebody, you know what they're like. You know they're going to be running around doing all this. So give them the information. If you know somebody that well, you know that they're just going to be running off half-cocked. So give them the information so this stuff doesn't happen. And why doesn't anybody ever talk to anybody? They keep on all the secrets. It really bothers me. But with all that being said, I am likely to continue with this series because I'm interested to see where the Zoe and Xander relationship goes, especially in regards to the fact that it is a little bit of a Romeo-Juliet love story, because the witches and the werewolves, they ain't the best of friends. So I am keen to see where it goes into the next book, or if it's one of those series that then moves you onto one of the other main characters within the story. You know, when I said that I was going to try to keep this video quick, I may have actually lied to both you and myself. But we are moving into September. I managed to read 4 books in September and the color was brown. And you'll be surprised, I actually found brown hard to find books that fit with that. Especially because, does light brown count? I mean, it's brown, but is it tan? It was an awkward situation all round. But like I said, I managed to get through 4 books. The first of which is another decluttering book. This is Clutter Intervention, How Your Stuff is Keeping You Stuck by Trisha Morris. And this book took me a hot minute to get through. At times, I found it really dragging. The concepts and the themes that Morris goes through in this book are incredibly interesting, but at times I felt that it kind of repeated itself and dragged on when it wasn't necessary for it to drag on. In saying that, if you are being kept by your stuff, this is not a decluttering book in the regular kind of area of a decluttering book. This really gets into your mindset and I guess the psychology behind how you get attached and stuck on stuff. And I will say that a lot of this stuff hit very close to home because I am connected to many stuff and I do have a lot of trouble moving it on, especially when 100%, especially when that stuff is still useful. So if you are like me and you are a closet hoarder and you are feeling stuck by your stuff, give this book a read as well. Next up, we have The Path Made Clear, Discovering Your Direction and Purpose by Oprah Winfrey. I also listened to this via audiobook and it was narrated by Oprah herself. I will say for me, I did feel that it was too heavy on the religion side of things. But in saying that, that is a very common attribute for books that are regarding this type of theme. Though I will say the theme was discovering your purpose and direction, I did feel that I actually wasn't given directions on how to do that. I didn't feel that the book actually was doing what it said it did and making my path clear and teaching me, showing me how to discover my purpose and direction. It more felt like a chronology of interviews that Oprah had done over her time that discuss purpose and how other people came to their aha moments. And understandably, really, the way for you to come to your aha moment is maybe to learn how others did. But it just hit off the mark for me. In saying that, it did spur me on to read the next book that I listened to, and that was Rising Strong as a Spiritual Practice by Brené Brown. The Brown, it's right there in the name. I'll just say that I loved this book. It was less of a book and more of an audio version of, I guess, a seminar that Brown presented, but it was packaged in the form of a book with kind of like chapters as such. But I will be classing it as a book for this case and purpose. So like I said, I loved it. And I actually wish I had got around to reading work by Brené Brown a lot sooner. She has been in my peripherals and on my hit list, but I hadn't yet made it into reading her. I'm definitely going to be hitting up a few more of her books going forward. In regards to this particular book, it kind of takes the elements discussed in her Rising Strong book and gives them a different direction, kind of focus them into a way that you can actually make that concept theme, I guess, a spiritual practice, how you should relate to it and how it relates to you. With saying that, I feel like you would probably get more from it if you had already read the Rising Strong book. Obviously, I have not read it, so I can't tell you how much you would get from it or you wouldn't get from it, but I did feel though I may have got more if I'd already read her original book. I didn't feel that I had no idea what was going on or I was lost to any understanding because I hadn't read it. So that is definitely a 5-star book for me, and I will be diving headstrong into Rising Strong next time I actually am able to, which I do not think will possibly be this year because it won't match any of the colors coming up in the next couple months. And last but not least, for September, I actually read Hot and Badgered. This is by Shelley Lawrenston, and it's the first book in the Honey Badger Chronicles. This is another shifter book. It follows, obviously, a family of honey badgers. And by family, I mean 3 sisters who are honey badgers, though 2 of them are, I guess, hybrid honey badgers. And they are in some deep trouble. They meet Mr. Hunky Spunk here on the front cover. His name is Berg, and he is a grizzly bear shifter. So our main girl, Charlie, literally falls into Berg's life, and somehow they end up on a whirlwind adventure that has to do with the terrible trouble that the McGilligan family, their extended family, have pulled these girls into. Though, if you ask any member of the McGilligan family, they'll inform you that they don't class those 3 girls, Freddie's 3 daughters, as part of the family. Like I said, this is the first book in the series, and I have already put the second book on hold. Though I've got the impression from reading the blurb and Goodreads that the second book actually focuses more on one of the other sisters, and this is part of a trilogy, and I think that each book focuses on one of the specific sisters. Overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I enjoyed the shifter element that was included. It did have a wee bit of spice, but for a title like Hot and Badgered, it wasn't as spicy as I would have expected. But a touch of spice is always nice. So those are the 12 books that I have read over the last few months. And now we are heading into October, and the colour for October is orange. I'm hoping going forward that I'll actually manage to give these updates in a more timely manner. And I'm happy that I'm now going to be able to return these books to the library. So with that being said, I'm Verity. That was the number that will appear here. Update for the Colour Me Reading Project Pan. And now to the outro.